Hi and welcome to the next tutorial. In today's lesson, we will look at how to animate this isometric text using Adobe After Effects. Anyways guys, let's jump in. So the first thing that you will need is you will need to have this isometric text made in Adobe Illustrator. And if you don't already have it, you can go and watch the previous video that shows you how to actually create this. If you do have this, then you need to follow along. What we need to do is we need to create a separate layer by clicking this button over here, and we can create different layers, and we need to separate the text and put it in each of those layers. So once you have a few layers that you've created, you then need to grab the selection tool and you need to highlight as much of the text as possible. You can hold Shift to pick up any faces that you've missed. And then what you need to do is press Ctrl G to group it. And then you can come over here into your layers and just see if you've got all the parts to that letter N. And in this case I have, so I can drag this up to a new layer. So now I'm just going to turn that off so I can repeat the process again. So again, come over here, select as much of the letter as possible. I'm just going to hold Shift and get that face as well. Ctrl G to group, and then we're just going to check. All good, move it to the next layer, and I'm just going to take that off. So the A is going to be a little bit tricky, but again I can just hold Shift and get all those faces. I'm just going to press Ctrl G to check to see if I've gotten everything, and you can see that there's a mistake there, so I'm going to undo that, hold Shift and get that section in there. So once I highlight it all, Ctrl G, let's check. It's good. We can move it to the next layer, and then I'm just going to take that off, and then finally the E and the L. Cool. So now I've got all my letters separated, and this is exactly what I need for After Effects. So save your file as an Adobe Illustrator document, and then we can go to After Effects. So once in After Effects, we need to import our file by going into Import File. And once you import the file, you want to import it as a composition. So we're just going to click OK, and now we have our composition down here at the bottom. So if you double click on that, you can see that you have all of the layers here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly rename all of these layers just by pressing Enter and then typing the letter of whatever sentence that you have. And finally the last layer is obviously the background. Cool. So now I've got all my letters on separate layers, and now we can actually animate this. So I'm just going to cut, or I'm just going to trim the comp sequence to roughly around about 5 seconds. I'm just going to right click on that so I can trim it. And so now we're going to start with the L. We're going to press P on our keyboard for position. We are going to probably go forward in time half a second, and then I'm going to click on the stopwatch, and then I'm going to bring it back to the first keyframe, and I'm just going to move this out, okay, until it's off the screen. And then I'm going to repeat the process for all of the letters. So I'm going to start with the keyframe there. I'm going to add another keyframe at half a second, and then I'm just going to move this vertically off the top of the screen. So again, same process, P. Okay, we're going to set a keyframe there, come back to the start of that animation, and I'm just going to move it. So I've got the first 3 letters all coming in, and that looks pretty cool. So I'm just going to do the same with the letter R. Again, position, set a keyframe to start, and then I'm just going to add another keyframe, and this one is going to come from, let's say, the right hand side, and then the final one, which is going to be N. I'm going to do the same thing again, so I'm going to set a keyframe there, and then I'm just going to bring it back to about here, and I'm just going to click and put this as a diagonal one there. So now I've got all of these keyframes working together to get to that animation. Now that looks pretty cool in itself, but we're just going to add a little bit to that. So to make this a little bit better, what we need to do is we need to highlight all those keyframes, right click on it, and then go to Easy Ease. And so now when we play that back, if you look at the graph over here, you can see that there's a bit of acceleration, hits that point, and then it comes back down. So that's pretty cool. Now another cool thing that you could do is you can stagger all of these letters. So instead of this keyframe starting here, we can move it forward in time a bit. And so now when we play that back, you can see that the letters, they come in a few frames after each other. Now obviously if you want to bring them out a little bit more, you can, and you can play around with some of the settings for how much you actually want to stagger, but that's another cool effect. And yeah, and that's about it for your first little intro into animating in After Effects. So we didn't really do too much in here. So the final thing that we can do is we can just go back to our main composition and we can just trim the work area to probably around about, I don't know, about 3 seconds. And then we can just right click, trim comp to work area. And there we have our simple animation. Now you can export this by going into File, Export, and then exporting the project. So anyways, that's about it. I hope you guys learned something. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.